This is the second release for Booker's here in 2025. It's called By the Pond Batch, and like all modern Booker's batches, it comes with a story and an uncut, unfiltered bourbon baked inside. Let's see if it's better than Barry's batch. Stay right here. It's the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C from the Mash and Drum, and welcome back to the show. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and as usual, thanks to all the amazing support from you guys. So I was away for a little bit. I was on a work trip, and then I went to Nashville and Tennessee and Chattanooga and Tullahoma for a bunch of picks. So it's good to be back making some content. I got a lot of catching up to do. All right, so according to the batch story, this batch was named after Booker Noe's beloved backyard pond, a place where you would likely find him on a sunny day when he wasn't working at the distillery. Now here's the thing, it wasn't a natural pond, it was a man-made pond that Booker wanted in his backyard to raise catfish and bluegill, so they always had fresh fish for dinner. Now if you remember, there was a Booker's batch in 2016 called Bluegill Creek, which I don't think is named for the pond. I think that was a different creek, but you can see the correlation there in basically his love for bluegill. All right, so let's talk about this batch, which is made up of barrels from 7 different production dates and were aged in 8 different warehouses. It's aged 7 years, 1 month, and 20 days, and it's coming in uncut and unfiltered at 126.5 proof, with a suggested retail price for usual Bookers of about 90 bucks. And like I said, we are gonna compare this to Barry's batch, the first release in 2025, and see which one is holding the lead right now. We'll see. All right, let's dive in. Here we go. So right off the bat, there is that beam nuttiness, that Booker's signature flavor profile that you normally get. However, there was definitely more vanilla cream in here than I remember being in some Bookers. A lot of vanilla cream, a lot of brown sugar. This one took a minute to open up. When I first opened it up, it was a little bit, I don't know, I feel like something was holding back in the flavor profile. I was just getting all that nuttiness that you normally get from a Booker's, but this is slightly sweeter. I should say a lot more sweeter. A lot more sweet. How do you say that? A lot more sweet. Yeah, tons of brown sugar, almost like a sweet tea note with some brown sugar in it. So yeah, on the nose, a good amount of sweetness. Again, I know I always harp on this every time we review a Booker's, and it's always like, you know, where is that dark, rich red fruit note that I love to find in Jim Beam? I haven't really gotten it in many Booker's batches, especially recently, and this one I'm not really smelling either. Maybe we'll taste it. All right, let's give it a try. Cheers. On the palate, that is all Booker's, baby. That is peanut butter, honey. That is a peanut butter and honey sandwich. A lot of spice. The baking spices are there. You get a lot of the oak spice from the cask. Yeah, that one comes in a little bit hot, but that was the first sip of the day. Let's go for another one here. All right, so second sip is when all the vanilla, sweet tea, brown sugar really comes to the forefront. Again, it's not very layered. However, it's not that dry, peanut, funky type of profile that I think some people love in Booker's. I do think there's a little bit of that. It's just not clearly in your face like some other batches. But I do think there's an elevated sweetness here, especially versus some of those other batches that are really peanut forward and peanut shell forward. There is a peanut butteriness to it, but it's definitely sweeter. The other thing I'm picking up here, the more I sip this, is a little bit of a, I mean, it's 7 years old. Most of the batches of Booker's are now typically coming in at about 7 years old. But I do feel like there's a little bit of a youthful characteristic here. It's a little bit, drinks a little hot for sure, but you know, some Booker's do. There's really nothing here that's making me say, wow, this is just, it's a solid batch of Booker's. It's nothing crazy. It's got all the flavors I feel like most people look for. I do think the one difference here, I feel like I'm getting like a graham cracker note, which is interesting. We'll go for one more sip here. Yeah, just a solid, sweet batch of Booker's. All right. Let's compare it to Barry's batch and see what we get. All right, glad I didn't hit myself on the face. Here is the first batch of Booker's for 2025. This is Barry's batch. So Barry's batch comes in at 7 years, 2 months, and 4 days, and it comes in at 125.7 proof. So let's see which one I like better here so far in 2025. I don't think I've actually had Barry's batch again since I reviewed it. So let's see which one I favor here. So interestingly enough, Barry's batch comes off a little bit older to me. It's a little, at least it's a little bit more rounded on the nose. I'm not really getting any of those youthful characteristics here. But I will say, batch 2 here for 2025 is quite a bit sweeter compared to Barry's batch. All right, let's try Barry's batch here. I really dig the Barry's batch. It's actually a little bit more rounder, comes off a little bit more integrated. The blend just seems to come together a little bit better in Barry's batch versus By the Pond. By the Pond has an elevated sweetness, but it also has a little bit of a youthful quality to it compared to Barry's batch. Yeah, I think Barry's batch is just a more rounded, better integrated batch of Bookers here in 2025. However, I do think some people may really like the elevated sweetness of the By the Pond batch. I do think there is some more sweetness there, but for me, Barry's batch just has a much more rounded, much more integrated type of blend and flavor that I just prefer in Bookers. All right, so before the final breakdown, let's go to our question of the day. All right, today's question of the day comes from Adam Westman 2920. He says, if you could create one release for any distillery, what would you do? Would it be a Four Roses Rye, an Old Grandad 114 10-year, something from Turkey? So this answer may surprise you. It's not a Turkey product, even though my first instinct would go, cheesy gold foil from Wild Turkey, try to recreate that, or, maybe take a 12-year Wild Turkey 101, get some really unique barrels, blend that together, put it in a cheesy gold foil tube, like from back in the 80s, and maybe that becomes the actual release. I've always thought about, Michter's American. Like Michter's American it's just vanilla ice cream in a glass, and I think it's only like 89 proof or 88 proof. It's a really low proof point. I want to see a Michter's American at cask strength. That would be a lot of fun. Or honestly, just a Michter's 10-year single barrel at cask strength. I think Michter's 10 years are usually so good. I would like for that to come out of cask strength, which could be really cool. But I think the number one release I would want to create, and this actually has to do with Beam Suntory, it's Old Crow. I want to bring Old Crow back to its glory. I want high-age whiskeys done in the old style, whether it be whatever the original mash bill was, original yeast strain. I would just want to try to recreate what Old Crow was back in the 60s and 70s. Some of those whiskeys were just outrageously good, and I feel like the world needs Old Crow to be great again. Great question, Adam, and for those of you watching, if you have a question of the day, make sure you leave it in the comments below. All right, final breakdown time. All right, final breakdown on the Booker's By the Pond batch, the second release for 2025 from Jim Beam. Price for this one about $90. When it comes to resale market, these are usually not upcharged, maybe $90 to $100 the most, and even in some places at Costco, you can find them even cheaper. Availability on these is supposedly limited, but I think it's actually above average now. I've seen Booker's batches, especially here in Ohio, when they do release, they usually sit around for a little bit before they're gone. Value for this batch in particular, I think, is a below average value. Other than the elevated sweetness, there's not much else for me here that's really holding my attention. The most I'd pay here, if somehow this goes on sale and I can wait it out, it'd be great if I could pay like no more than 60 or 70 bucks for this. But if that's not possible where you are, then I'm not going any higher than retail if anyone out there has to have this batch. Alternatives for this one, honestly, just go pick up a Wild Turkey Rare Breed, go grab yourself. Even Barry's batch, if you need to have a Booker's for 2025, or you're still waiting them out, I do prefer Barry's as we saw. But this one, honestly, just go get a Knob Creek 120 proof 9-year single barrel. And lastly, is this a skip, a try before you buy, a buy, or a buy and back it up? For me, this one's a skip. Nothing's really holding my attention here. It's good, not great. It's a solid Booker's batch. I just think that Barry's batch has a little bit more going on, even a better mouthfeel. I actually think the By the Pond batch comes off a little bit thin. Again, I do think there's some sweet flavors here that many people would like, but for me, I think Barry's batch is better. And this one, to me, maybe you wait for the third release here from Booker's and see how that goes. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this review for the Booker's by the Pond batch, the second release in 2025. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit the like button. And if you haven't yet, find me on Instagram. Let me know down in the comments if you've gotten your hands on this yet, what you think about it. Are you still even buying Booker's? It seems like people still are, because every time I review a Booker's, there's a lot of interest on it. So with that said, like I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. Cheers. It's good to be back. Take care, guys. See you soon.